Gentleman from Indiana reserves his time. The gentleman from Florida.
Madam Chairman, first I would like to thank Mr. Visklowski for his much more detailed description of this legislation. And I would now yield to the chairman of the full committee on appropriations, who has strongly committed to making sure that we pass all of our appropriations bills. Mr. Rogers, for 5 minutes.
Gentleman from Tennessee recognized for 5 minutes. Kentucky for 5 minutes.
Big difference. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding this time. And of course, I rise in support of this, the DoD Appropriations Bill. The bill provides more than $512 billion in base funding for our national security and military efforts, and $85.8 billion in overseas contingency operations war funding. This is a base funding decrease of $5.1 billion below fiscal 13, but is about $28.1 billion above the current level caused by automatic sequestration spending cuts. This total reflects an appropriate, thorough analysis of what is needed to keep this country safe. Freedom isn't free. Our liberties, our rights, our property are preserved by our national defense, but at a cost. Sufficient funding for the Pentagon and our military is of the utmost importance to the continued prosperity of the United States of America. It is and should be our top priority. We've already seen the distressing toll that the heavy-handed, indiscriminate cuts of sequestration have taken on our military, from grounded planes to reduced training time to postponed maintenance, all of which contribute to the loss of readiness of our troops. And as we saw all this month, as Department of Defense civilian furloughs began, our economy is also taking a significant hit. The funding level in this bill strikes a balance between fiscal responsibility and sufficient support for our military. Within this total, we prioritize funding to advance our missions abroad, to prepare and equip our troops, and to ensure the readiness and effectiveness of our military. This includes adequate funding to purchase the equipment, weapons, and vehicles needed to keep our military protected at the ready and able to conduct successful operations. The bill also provides funding for ongoing operations and maintenance of military facilities, equipment, and bases fundamental to the successful missions of our armed forces. And essential funding is provided to develop new defense technologies, to advance the success of current military operations, and to plan whatever new threats may arise in the future. A well-equipped military is not as effective without strong and well-prepared troops. This funding supports readiness programs that prepare our troops for both combat and peacetime missions, giving them flight time and battle training. In addition, the bill funds the authorized 1.8% pay raise for the military, above the 1% the President requested. To keep our troops healthy before and after battle, the Defense Health Program receives an increase above last year's level, funding medical facility upgrades, traumatic brain injury, and psychological health research, and suicide prevention outreach. The bill also addresses what has been a black mark on our military, Madam Chairman, the problem with sexual assault. The legislation fully funds sexual assault prevention and response programs and adds $25 million in funding for sexual assault victim assistance to preserve trust in our military and ensure that members of our armed forces are not sacrificing more than they already have to serve the nation. But a balanced budget, one that does not put us into massive debt to other governments or threaten our economic stability, is also paramount to our national security. Even these critical national security programs cannot spend precious tax dollars unchecked. The bill has implemented common sense reductions wherever possible including rescinding unused prior year funding, nixing a proposed civilian pay raise, and saving $1 billion in anticipated excess funding. We've also prohibited funding to modify facilities in the U.S. to house Guantanamo detainees or to allow their transfer in the U.S. or its territories. When all is said and done, this bill cuts more than $5 billion below last year's enacted level, but I must emphasize that these reductions will in no way harm or negatively affect our national defense or the troops that fight to protect this great country. Madam Chairman, some will complain that the bill breaks the cap placed on defense spending under the sequester level for fiscal year 2014, put into place by the Budget Control Act. To this I say, of course it does. Mr. Chairman, I ask for an additional minute.
Yes, sure. How much?
Gentleman's recognized for an additional
Yield
minute.
the gentleman additional 2 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized for an additional 2 minutes.
Of course it does. This massive, irresponsible, dangerous reduction to defense spending under the sequestration cap is completely beyond the pale. For example, if nothing is done to cancel the next round of sequestration cuts that are scheduled to take effect when the Congress adjourns, this bill would be cut to a total of $468 billion. So, before I close, Madam Chairman, I'd like to take this time to thank the venerable chairman of this committee, of this subcommittee, Bill Young. He's a national asset, and he has shown again the skill that he has in putting together a great bill. And to Mr. Visklosky, thank you for being a great partner to our chairman throughout this process. And to the staff and the entire subcommittee members, without your hard work, we would not have this bill on the floor. I salute you and endorse this bill wholeheartedly. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.